Hi guys, welcome to the Clubhouse. We've got another great episode in store today. Alex Davis, England Rugby Sevens player, is on talking to me. He's got an incredible story, one of huge amount of resilience. He's won many medals over the year for his country. He's shown incredible mental strength as well, and he's on the line now. So good morning, Alex. Thank you for joining us. How are you finding life in lockdown?
Morning, Toby. Yeah, nice to see you this morning. The sun's shining, which is great. I'm finding lockdown all right, to be honest with you. It's been a bit of an adjustment moving back home for the first time in sort of 6 or 7 years with my mum, which is strange, but we're getting on all right. And yeah, generally, I've found lockdown okay. Thanks.
And then the obvious change, I guess, with you is your hair. You've launched an amazing initiative with the help of your sister, Shave, Donate, Nominate, which of course is to raise valuable funds for NHS charities. Did you imagine it would be so successful?
But just before, it's not the horrible beard I've got. It's the awful shortness of hair on top, just to clear it up with people. But yeah, no, it's been phenomenal. We set it up probably just over about 5-6 weeks ago now, kind of around the start of lockdown, and it was quite impulsive, really. Just thought, I'm not going to be able to get to the barbers for a few weeks, and maybe I'll just see. I wanted to basically see how I could help the NHS and help people in this uncertain time, and obviously recognise that as an athlete, have a pretty good platform to be able to do that. And so, yeah, kick-started this Shave, Donate, Nominate campaign and set an initial target of £5,000, and the uptake since then has just been insane. We've raised over £26,000, which, like you say, is just a phenomenal amount of money.
I mean, I would get involved and obviously shave my head as well. But as you can probably see by this angle, if I was to shave my head, there's no guarantee any of it will actually come back. Whereas you've got a good sort of solid hairline, solid head of hair as well. And I need some sort of shelter for my head. So whilst I would usually get involved, I'm happy just to donate.
Yeah, well, that's obviously the most important thing. I think for some people, shaving their head is pretty drastic measure just to raise a bit of cash. So most people have been more keen to donate rather than take the clippers to their hair. So I appreciate the donations. They're obviously the most important thing.
But you've had some big names getting involved as well. Obviously, you live in Bristol, so the Bristol Bears, a few of the players have got involved in coaching staff as well.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, I use some of my sporting connections to reach out to people and just ask how they could or do their best to support us. And the Bristol Bears community decided to get involved, which is awesome. Obviously, quite a few rugby teammates of mine have got involved. Rory McConaughey at Bath, who used to play sevens with myself. Will Edwards at the sevens. And then Sam Billings, England and Kent cricket. We've had a number of people with relatively high profiles. But to be honest, the most amazing thing is that we've only had a small number, maybe 3 or 4, but we've had a few women get involved, which obviously for a woman to shave their head is pretty good going in comparison to a man. So that's stupendous.
Yeah, absolutely. You've used your connections very, very well. Now, obviously, you've made your name for yourself in the rugby world. You grew up in Bristol. We went to school together. Some people may not know that. So where did your love for the game of rugby initially begin? Where was it born from?
Well, I started playing when I was sort of 6 years old. So that's like about 20 years ago. So I've been playing it for like pretty much as long as I can remember. And I guess the love for it was born out of the love my dad had for it, really. He was a passionate rugby player, supporter, follower himself. And I think obviously the Southwest has always been a bit of a hub for rugby. And Bristol has a number of good clubs. And when obviously growing up in Bristol, my mum and dad were keen to involve me and my sister in sporting activities. And so took me down to the local club, which is Clifton RFC in Bristol, and enjoying playing with my mates. And I guess for a number of years, that was the main reason why I was playing, just out of pure love for it.
It dawned on me just how good or how talented you were at school. I remember it so well to this day. We were both playing, I think, in like an under 15s game. Well, I say playing, I was attempting to play, and we both just come back from injury at the same time. I think you started the game. I came on at half time, and my first contribution, of course, was disastrous. I think you made a break, you went down, I had to clear out the ruck, and I tripped over my chubby feet and kneed you in the face and basically broke your nose, and you're out for another month. And I just remember the whole atmosphere changing. There was no excitement about me returning to the rugby field. It was all about you. And then I came on, disastrous start, and managed to put you out for another month.
Well, you were just trying to make your way back into the team, trying to clear any excuse to get onto that starting 15. You're like, right, I'll clear out one of the boys, and then maybe I'll get a shot.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is,
it's still not played with. Yeah, as you can tell, it's still not been fixed. The nose has been broken a considerable amount of times, so it's not just you, mate.
Now, I remember coming to watch you actually. I think you were playing for like under 16s England rugby at the time. What percentage of players, I mean, at that point, had you kind of had a discussion with coaches that said you could go all the way? What percentage of players actually go on to represent their country, both in 15s and in 7s?
Yeah, I remember that game actually. It was we were playing, I think it was Scotland maybe, yeah, and that was kind of my first I guess my first taste for proper representative schoolboy rugby. Up to that point, I'd had involvements with sort of regional and county stuff. But in terms of representing my country at the age of 15, 16, that was completely new to me. And so I think that's probably where I set my goals as to what I want to become a professional player now. I'd like to do this for my life. In terms of how many players make it on, I'm not really sure because I hadn't had too many discussions. Fortunately, I'd obviously, we were lucky enough that when we were playing at school, we had a really strong year group, and a lot of the guys we played with at school, we also played together at club rugby. So in terms of our school team, we were quite successful throughout our years. And so that obviously helped my own personal success in terms of going and playing on for the county and the regional teams. And I think it was just through those sort of processes and avenues that people start to identify players that have got a particular interest or motivation to take on rugby further than just a hobby. And for me, that was, I guess, like around that sort of age, 15, 16, where I really identified the fact that I was passionate about rugby and I wanted to go professional with it. And obviously getting the call up to represent the country at 16 and wear the England Rose is just a boyhood dream, really.
And what is that feeling like when you first pull on that England shirt? You're obviously there, your family, your friends are watching, proud moment.
Yeah, it's bonkers. You can't really describe it. I guess if I was to reflect on it now, I think there's probably not a huge number of those guys still playing. If I was to look through the team sheet, I'd be interested to know how many are playing at a professional level now, or at least semi-professional, or still in the game. Obviously, at the time, it's absolutely everything to you. It's what you dream of achieving. Like you say, you've got family and friends there supporting you, and you're wearing the England Rose, which you've seen your idols like Johnny Wilkinson winning the World Cup, Jason Robinson, players like that. And so to be sharing that sort of honour is incredible. But looking back on it, you probably, as a kid, blow it up into something way more than it really is. But at the time, no, certainly it's a dream come true.
And of course, you went to sort of sixth form or college in Bristol as well at Filton College. You were playing with some decent players at that point as well that have gone on to represent, club rugby teams and their national side as well.
Yeah, I obviously, like I said, I was keen to pursue rugby as a career. And I kind of had to make the decision. Fortunately, we had a strong team at school in Bristol where we went. But I thought for me to really progress, I wanted to go somewhere where rugby was at the forefront of a school's kind of curriculum. And they really put their efforts into helping people progress through their ambitions of becoming professional rugby players. And so I was exploring options and decided to go to Filton, which is kind of the local rugby college in Bristol, but just renowned for its success in terms of producing rugby stars. I think the year before I joined, Toby Osborne left. So, I mean, that shows the kind of pedigree of players they were producing. And yeah, I spent 2 years there, which it may have taken a bit of an effect on my school curriculum and my education, but we were extremely successful for my time there, both in 15s and 7s. We had, like you say, a number of players go on to gain professional contracts after their final year in sixth form, 18 years old. So, I mean, that just shows the production line of players that they had going in and out.
And you mentioned your school, the school side of things that maybe took a bit of a knock, given how focused you were on your rugby career. Did you have to make many other sacrifices? Naturally, around that age group, people start going out, drinking a lot more into town. Did you feel as though you had to just make slight adjustments to maybe avoid those situations?
Yeah, definitely. I guess you can look at them as sacrifices, or you can look at them as choices. And for me, they were choices that I was willing to make and wanted to make to gain as much as I could on the rugby pitch. Obviously, like you said, a lot of our mates were starting to explore going out with one another, and I guess starting to grow up and experience what the average 16 to 18-year-old would experience. But for me, I knew that to achieve what I wanted to in rugby, I was going to have to make some choices that would mean I'd miss out on those kind of experiences, which obviously is a hard thing to do, especially at that kind of age when you're very influential and the rest of your peer group are out doing different things. You've got to make the choices to better yourself in other ways. And yeah, it was tough. I guess I look back on it and look at when people share stories and memories. Obviously, I'm not involved in some of them, but then I've got my other things that I'm proud of to be able to not make excuses for why I did it, but those are the reasons for it.
And obviously, those sacrifices are the things that then earned you a place at Loughborough. Beyond that, did you make an immediate sort of switch to 7-a-side rugby, or was 15 still your focus? Did you still see a career in 15-a-side rugby as the priority?
Yeah, well, whilst I was at Filton in both my first year at Filton and my second year at Filton, we in my first year we lost in the final of the Roslyn Park Sevens, and then in my second year we won the Roslyn Park Sevens, which is the pinnacle of national schoolboy sevens rugby. Really, if you win the Roslyn Park Sevens, then you're at the top of national schoolboy sevens rugby. And at that point, when I was 18, I actually got invited to go down and train with the England Sevens squad for a week when Ben Ryan was head coach. And obviously, I was pretty blown away at that point to be invited to that kind of environment where you've got full-time professionals, the likes of Dan Norton, James Rodwell, like household world famous sevens names. To be invited to that 18 was just crazy. But yeah, decided to go to Loughborough. I guess my mum and dad were quite a big influence in that decision in terms of helping guide me into just structuring something around my life in terms of if rugby didn't work out for me in a professional environment, how would I be able to fall back on something and still succeed in life. And yeah, but when I went to Loughborough, 15s was definitely the main game. I didn't play a lot of sevens actually throughout my time there. I think just for the nature of university rugby, we played a lot of rugby there, and obviously there's a new social life and social circle to explore. So that was a lot of fun as well. So sevens took a bit of a backward seat. 15s was definitely the main motivator throughout my time at Loughborough, and I absolutely loved it. I had the best 3 years there playing student rugby, playing with in the national leagues with the Saturday side team, and again had a fortunately pretty successful time at Loughborough with my rugby there.
And beyond that, did you receive many offers past, once you graduated from Loughborough, did you receive any offers from 15-a-side teams to go and play for them, or was it sort of straight then into the England setup to kind of earn your first contract?
Yeah, well, 15s, as I said, because I'd played so much for sort of 3 years, I hadn't even considered sevens. 15s for me was the next step, and earning a professional contract. And yeah, I had a few offers, mainly from championship clubs. I can't remember. I had an offer from Bristol, but I can't remember whether they were Premiership or Championship at the time. Anyway, I had like 2 or 3 offers, which were obviously, again, appealing because it was an avenue into playing professional rugby, which was a goal of mine. So many players have progressed from the Championship onto the Premiership. But an opportunity came up to play some sevens at the end of my final season with Loughborough, and I loved the game so much at school. I couldn't turn down the opportunity. It's obviously always a great time of year to play sevens. The sun's usually shining and the weather's good. So yeah, an old coach of mine got in touch and basically invited me to come and play on an invitational team. And at the time, Simon Amor, who's our current head coach for the sevens, was helping out with that side, and things went pretty well for me. I played all right in the tournament. Had a couple conversations with Simon, and he said, "Well, would be interested in you playing a few more tournaments if you're up for it." And I said, "Absolutely. Anything to sort of give myself a chance to go and play some sevens, travel the world, and get in front of the head coach." So yeah, took the opportunity with both hands, and kind of it came out of nowhere, really. Did all right for a few tournaments, got invited down for a couple of weeks training session with the sevens team, was invited to go and play with them on the European circuit in Lyon, I think it was at the time. And yeah, after that, I got offered a contract, and I've been playing for the last 6 years.
I mean, the seven series as well. I mean, you obviously go straight into playing for England, which is incredible. But when you have those championship offers from the 15 side of things on the table, it's not always so glamorous, is it, playing in the championship? These players aren't necessarily paid as well as the top Premiership players, or if you compare it to, say, for example, football, where there's huge money in the game, there's not necessarily the same levels of funding in rugby. So I guess the incentive for you is to be able to travel the world as well, visit countries you've never dreamed of visiting, and you get to play the sport you love as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, being a young, enthusiastic student coming out of having played student rugby, and the kind of the style and brand of student rugby fits and aligns very well with sevens. It's quite a loose style of play. Obviously, a load of fearless students just running around the pitch, wanting to have some fun and chuck the ball around. Like, sevens and student rugby go hand in hand quite well. And there's actually been, especially in our England sevens team, quite a few guys that have transitioned from university rugby into playing for England sevens. And yeah, I mean, these championship offers were pretty appealing. Like I say, especially for a young guy coming out of university. I guess I was tempted by a few of them. I think one was at Jersey, so that would have been quite cool to go and live over Jersey for a couple of years. But yeah, definitely the appeal of potentially, if selected, traveling the world with England sevens to these amazing locations all around the world. Like, there's 10 different stops on the tour, located in various different countries, and you pretty much chase the sun all year round. Like, for that, as a young guy coming out, and also obviously playing for England, that just tops it off, really. For me, it was a bit of a no-brainer.
And what is your first reaction when you pick up your first cap? It was 2014 that you picked up your first cap for England for the sevens. I mean, how do you react to that? Who'd you call first?
Yeah, I think I was quite fortunate probably to get my first cap in 2014 straight, like literally first season, straight in the deep end. I think there was actually quite a few injuries in the squad, so it was kind of like, well, we're going to have to select you, sort of thing. But I was in the right place at the right time, and I earned my cap, and we went out to the Gold Coast, Australia. I mean, what kind of better place can you imagine to earn your first cap for England? You travel out to the Gold Coast, Australia, which I'd never been to Australia before, so that for me was incredible. The weather was like 30 degrees. You were located right next to the beach. Yeah, I mean, it was just insane. Obviously, the first thing I did was call my mum and dad and let them know that I was selected to go and play for England in Australia. And it all felt quite surreal, really. I remember actually at the time that Gold Coast was a standalone tournament, and it was in October, and it was, yeah, obviously my first cap. So I was super excited to be flying out, and I knew also that we'd be flying out just a day or two either side of my birthday. And I was, oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to be celebrating my birthday in Australia, playing for England Sevens, my first cap. And it figured out that as we took off from London Heathrow, I think it was like October the 2nd. And due to the travel, we landed on October the 4th, something. So I just lost my birthday in transit from London to Australia. But I mean, yeah, it was a crazy, crazy trip. And we won a bronze, I think, that weekend. So yeah, that to kick off my England Sevens like campaign like that was just crazy.
I guess losing your birthday is a small price to pay for a bronze medal as well.
Yeah,
I mean, who was your sort of biggest influence from a playing perspective with those early days with England, player-wise? Who kind of put their arm around your shoulder? Who were the players that had the biggest influence on you?
Well, I guess obviously naturally, I hate saying it because he'll love to hear it, but Dan Norton was obviously a Southwest legend, like Bristol and Gloucester when he was playing 15s, and in the sevens world, he was just he still is like top of the pops, one of the main stars of the circuit. And but I'm trying to think back. So the guy I first roomed with on tour was a guy called Phil Burgess, who, funnily enough, actually went to Loughborough as well. He wasn't at Loughborough when I was there, but to have that kind of connection that we could share on tour, especially for me, where I wasn't like, although I was only my first cap, I'd only been in this professional environment for sort of 2 to 3 months, and that was my first experience. So a lot of it was very new to me in terms of just how people prepare and the processes around training and lots of other things. So having him there, who'd been in the team for a couple of seasons, I think at that point was really helpful. That was great. Fortunately, also there was another guy earning his first cap, a guy called Tom Bowen. I think it was his first cap. Anyway, he was pretty new in the squad also. So we're both earning our first cap. Yeah, that's right. So to have someone else in a similar position to me at the time was really useful. And like I said earlier, fortunately, a lot of the players involved in the squad had kind of come through that university transition, and so understood where I was coming from. And I think naturally that just creates a bond before you've even kind of really connected with people. And so for me, that was invaluable.
And shortly after this, of course, you had to, well, a year later, live out arguably your worst nightmare. Your father, Nick, sadly passed away, and I know he had a huge impact on your life. He was loved by so many, and we knew him back at school. He was always on the touchline watching us play, giving us advice and everything as well. How tough was it to deal with all the different external pressures of rugby at that time?
Yeah. So my dad actually, he initially firstly got diagnosed with leukemia whilst I was at university. I think it was my second year of university, and so that obviously for me and my family was a massive hit and a shock for us, and something that we had to start learning to live with. And he obviously immediately began a process of treatments and chemotherapy and all those sorts of things. But yeah, unfortunately, in 2015, it basically, he lost his fight with leukemia and died from it. But yeah, I guess whilst having only been in the rugby sevens professional environment for a year, and then having to deal with that, where obviously, although I was living out my dream as a professional rugby player, there are still expectations of you. There are still demands. It's a professional sport environment, and there are things that you're trying to achieve, the team are trying to achieve, and you have to remember the part you're playing in that. And so for me, when that happened, it was just completely set me back. It was in the 15-16 season, so in 6 months' time, the Olympics were going to be starting, which was where rugby sevens was featuring for the first time. And for me, that was a massive goal of mine, like everybody else's. And so I had to try and figure out how I was going to grieve the death of my father, as well as keep up my standards as a rugby player, because unfortunately, obviously, like most jobs, you could probably take time out, take time away from work, but sport doesn't wait for you. If you're not in training, you'll just get left behind. And I kind of had to make this decision to kind of get back into rugby as soon as possible, which was tough, but at the same time, obviously, it created a bit of a natural distraction. Good thing, bad thing, I'm not really sure. It probably meant that I didn't really grieve as well as I could have. But at the same time, it was a passion of mine and my dad that we shared. And so for me to be able to go out there and play rugby and represent England, and I guess feel as if I was like making him proud, then for me, that was a massive motivator and drive for me to continue playing.
Well, I mean, everybody deals with grief in different ways, but how long did it then take you? I mean, obviously your dad passed away. How long did it then take you beyond that point to actually pick yourself up and start training again, start joining up with the squad again? Of course, naturally, you probably want to be with your family as much as possible, but like you say, you have to make that decision to kick on.
Yeah, well, I mean, very kindly, Simon Amor, my head coach, decided to drive down to Bristol to see me and my family, which is obviously extremely thoughtful of him and something that we appreciated massively. And I had to make the decision at one point, basically, whether he wanted me to fly out to Dubai with the team. If I was ready for it, he said, look, we'll take you out to Dubai. We want you to play in the team. Obviously, if you come out and you feel like you're not ready, then we'll fly you home immediately. But so I was at one point having to make the decision between whether I was going to go to Dubai with the team, which was maybe at most 4 weeks after the death of my dad, or go to the family funeral. And obviously the decision was taken out of my hands that the funeral was within that time frame, so it was never going to work out in terms of being able to do both. But I flew out the week after Dubai to meet the team in Cape Town in South Africa, because I just wanted to throw myself back in. Like I said, for me, it was because me and my dad had this shared love for it. I wanted to just dive straight back in. And fortunately, my mum and sister decided to actually come out with me to South Africa, and the team allowed me, and the management allowed me to spend an extra week out there with my mum and my sister after the tournament finished, which is quite a rare thing. But for us to be able to do that, and I think that was the first time my mum and, well, I guess my family had seen me play abroad for England. And so despite all the horrible time and the grieving we were having to go through, for them to be able to come out and share that experience with me and see how special it was in Cape Town, which is just a extremely unique place to play rugby, because South Africa are just so passionate about it. Like, that was amazing. So yeah, got back into it pretty quickly. And I guess that, like, having reflected on that quite a bit, that probably resulted in me not dealing with the death of my father as well as I could have. Although my rugby was going well, like, I guess things away from rugby were taking a bit of a hit for that.
And when you say you weren't dealing with it very well, I mean, were there certain things, certain emotions or traits that you let out that kind of reflected that? At what point did you begin to maybe seek some external help to help you get through that process?
Yeah, so throughout my time at the Sevens, we've been lucky enough to have a team psychologist, a lady called Katie Warriner, who for me has been just incredible, not just for my work on the pitch, but also off the pitch. And like I say, for me, I started to, because I was so focused on, right, I'm back in rugby now, I've got to stay focused. The Olympics is coming up. That's my aim. That's my goal. I just focused everything in on that, and kind of with the death of my father and the emotions I was feeling like that, I just thought, right, I'm going to put that to one side. I'm basically just going to bottle it all up. As people say, I just bottled it up and I didn't speak about it. And it didn't really manifest into any sort of particular emotions or behaviors. But, well, I guess nothing visual, but inside it was obviously just like bubbling away, and just building up more and more as the pressure of rugby built up, the pressure of the Olympics. And because I wasn't sharing that, it meant that I was just suffering, I guess. And it was the wrong decision. But like you say, everyone grieves differently at the time. And I think I was just so solely focused on making it to the Olympics. And then going hand with that, like I experienced injury in the January after my dad's death. So like 2 or 3 months later, I had ankle surgery, which meant I was thrown straight into 8 to 12 weeks of intense rehab, which takes a lot of mental pressure, like a lot of mental fatigue as well as physical. And so for me, there was just like one event after the other that were just taking over, and it meant that I wasn't really ever having space or time to sit down. What's happened in my life? Why is this going on? And I think Katie, our team psychologist, probably recognised this. And so she was quite often keen for us to sit down one-on-one and have conversations about how I was feeling and doing. And she didn't particularly probe too deeply, because I think she recognized that there was obviously a lot of pain and hurt there, and she wanted it to come out naturally. And so she just started to ask questions and kind of guide me on this journey.
I mean, that must have taken a huge amount of mental strength to not only go through the passing of your dad, but then have that ankle surgery in January, subsequently recover from that. Did you then feel an extra pressure to get picked for Team GB, just to almost honour your father? Obviously, you had that amazing bond over the game. Did you feel that extra pressure then to go on and get picked for Team GB?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I mean, when he died, I made a promise to myself and to him. I said that I'm going to go to the Olympics. I'm going to be an Olympian. I'm going to go and represent Team G. And from that day, that was it. Yeah, I'd made a promise to myself and to him. And so I guess I knew in myself that if I wasn't going to go, then I know I'd never would have failed him as such, but I would have felt like I hadn't done it justice. And so, yeah, absolutely. For me, straight away, I was like, right, I've got to go to the Olympics. I'm going to make it, and just did everything I possibly could to achieve that.
And it paid off, and you get picked for Team GB. I mean, what is that feeling like initially when you get the phone call to say, did it come in the form of a phone call? How was that, moment?
So yeah,
Breakdown at that point? You
yeah. It was a pretty crazy process. The Team GB selection was obviously quite difficult and unique in comparison to other countries, because we had England, Scotland, and Wales playing on the World Series circuit against each other, and then for 8 to 10 weeks before the Olympics started, we had to bring all these nations together, a select number of players, and from I think it was maybe a squad of about 38, get down to 12 selected players, and then 2 traveling reserves, so 14 in total. And then in that time also play 3 or 4 tournaments. So we split the squad into 2 squads, play tournaments against each other. And yeah, fortunately I managed to get back fit after my ankle surgery, play some of the best rugby I think I've probably ever played, and be selected to go to Team GB. And that was a face-to-face conversation like we're having now with the 2 head coaches, Simon Amor and Babs, the Welsh coach. And yeah, it was kind of, you had the camp was over, you had your allocated time for the next day to come in, so everyone was like 10 minutes spaced apart, so we didn't bump into anyone in case anyone didn't get the news that they were hoping for. You come in, sit down, and you basically got told that you were or you weren't going to Rio to represent Team GB. And I mean, yeah, when I got told, it was just, I can't even really describe the sense of I guess relief, elation, happiness, joy, like the whole spectrum of emotions. Like, and then I rang my mum, and my mum was in the post office, and I remember calling her and telling her, and just like completely overwhelmed with emotion. And she kind of she ran out the shop and felt like she was going to faint, and she was just crying on the phone, and it was just bonkers. Yeah, absolutely crazy. I can't to put it into words, for all that hard work and I guess dedication and stuff that I was willing to put in, and at one point felt like I wouldn't make it because of the ankle surgery I was having. It was just, it was insane.
And then comes the hysteria that naturally surrounds an Olympics. It's the first time that sevens has been played in the Olympics as well. I mean, what was that like? Obviously, sevens is a very popular format anyway, but it just elevated it again to the next level. And you must have seen more and more attention like you've never experienced before.
Yeah, well, obviously we were sevens, and us as rugby players were suddenly thrown into this multi-sport event. I mean, some of the guys in the team had already had experience of like a multi-sport games through the Commonwealths, because sevens had been in the Commonwealth Games for a few years. I'm not sure how many cycles, but and had done really well there. But next thing you know, we were being shipped up to, I think it was Birmingham NEC, to like go to the kitting out where Adidas were kitting us out with all our kit. And it's like, you feel like a kid at Christmas. You're going into this like massive, great big arena, and there's walls of trainers, like suit fit, like personal suit fitting over here. There's like all the kit you could ever dream of in just bags and bags, like piled high. We all had like individual trolleys from like if you're going on a flight to an airport, just stacked 3 or 4 bags high, shoe boxes, like anything you could get your hands on, you just grab it, like pens, spoons, hats, whatever. So like you say, it was just that for all of us straight away was like, wow, like we're in it now, we've made it, this is really happening. I guess that's when we really started to realize what was happening. And like you say, the attention around the sport was growing as well. I think sevens, it was received so well in the Olympic community just because of its nature. It's fun, it's fast, it's often got a great atmosphere because of that fast and fun nature. And so people were taking to it, people were keen to get behind it. And when it got to Rio, it just blew up. And like you say, the people were really keen to see sevens succeed on the Olympic circuit.
It's an incredible achievement. You then fly out to Rio itself and you experience the most horrific of accidents in the gym. Talk us through that moment and what it felt like.
Yeah, so we were in a place called Belo Horizonte, which was about an hour or 2 hours north of Rio. So we'd flown in to what was our holding camp. So a number of teams were in holding camps outside of the Olympic Village. So I think we were there with some athletes, some swimmers, and yeah, we were about a week into our training, about I'd say 48 hours due to fly into the Olympic Village to really kickstart our Olympic campaign. Training had been going great. Everyone was excited. The usual kind of banter and laughter amongst everyone was pretty high. We were all in our Team GB kit, surrounded by flags and other athletes. And yeah, we were in the gym. I think it was probably our last gym session before we were due to fly into the village. And I was doing some single leg box jumps with some of the other guys. And as I came down on pretty much my last rep or my penultimate rep, I caught my ankle on the edge of the box and just rolled it over like that and was laid on the floor in absolute excruciating amounts of pain. And I'd experienced pain before, but kind of not like this. And my ankle blew up and I dislocated my ankle on a box jump, and obviously was immediately rushed into one of the medical rooms, and then transport was arranged for me to be taken to the hospital that had been set up for Team GB. And there I was passed through scanners and given painkillers and stuff like that, and basically had my leg put in a cast, given some crutches and sent back to the team hotel. So I had a dislocated ankle and severe ankle ligament damage. So it was at that point, it was pretty evident to me and everybody else in the team and the management that I wasn't going to be taking any further part in the Olympics, sadly.
I mean, getting there in the first place is an incredible achievement. I mean, in that moment, you think to yourself, will my luck ever change? Is this for me almost? Does it get to that point?
Yeah, definitely. It was so dramatic. I remember lying on the medical room bed with my physio, Remy, sort of rushing in and out, obviously trying to figure out what to do next, how to get to the hospital, all those sorts of things, which I wasn't really having to worry about. I had ice on my ankle, and I remember just covering my face like this and just basically just breaking down, having a cry. And like you say, I was, all sorts of questions were going through my head, but mostly it was like, why me? Why do I deserve this? How has this happened? Those sorts of things that just cycle round and round in your head. Yeah, I couldn't believe what was going on, and I guess I was in that kind of state of shock for a number of days as well.
But you turn it around at that point. In the same year, you somehow find the mental resilience to push on. You recover from your injury. You then take part in the Cape Town Sevens, which you subsequently win. There's a fantastic photo of you, I think, on your knees, just in sheer relief. I think you're exhausted as well, and your teammates celebrating. Is that probably the highlight of your career from a rugby perspective, that moment, that big comeback?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, naturally, after my disappointment in Rio, flying home, having surgery, and then watching the team go on to win an Olympic silver medal, I was devastated because I felt like I deserved to be there to share that moment with them. But yeah, getting back fit and then going to Cape Town later that year in December, and winning the Cape Town Sevens, beating South Africa in the final in their home tournament in front of a 55,000 sellout stadium. I mean, that is just bonkers. The noise was deafening. I honestly have never experienced anything like it. Walking out for the final to sing the anthems and just seeing this absolute sea of green people everywhere, all on the side of South Africa, was bonkers. And we managed to beat them 1917. And I've never seen a stadium empty so quickly. It was incredible. But yeah, to experience such a low and then such a high was really, I guess, again, the hard work I put in to get back from my rehab after the surgery, and then to have that shared experience with a lot of the guys who had been in Rio and won that silver medal was really special to be able to enjoy that with them.
I guess it is that moment at the end when you are celebrating with your teammates that you miss the most. It's not necessarily the medal itself. It's those moments afterwards when you're in the changing room and you're all together, being able to share those memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the medals are obviously, that's what you're given. That's the prize at the end of it. But it's the memories and the memories you create and with one another that mean the most. Like the medal will always be there, but I think the memories are the strongest thing that come out of it, definitely, because they're shared and so many people can relate to it.
And fast forward 2 years and a couple of injuries later to your hand and your knee. Do you almost feel that your greatest achievement in sport is the ability to kind of come back and build up that mental strength? Not necessarily the medals, but it's your strength of mind to keep coming back, that resilience that you've built up over the years. Do you almost feel like that is your greatest achievement?
Yeah, I guess I've never really thought of it like that, but I suppose because of the nature of the way my rugby career has gone, it hasn't been maybe as glamorous and spectacular and successful. It has been successful, but maybe not as much as I dreamt it would be. Obviously, I've been lucky enough to be selected to go to Olympics. I've won a Commonwealth bronze medal. I've got a silver medal from a Rugby Sevens World Cup. So it's definitely been successful. But yeah, I guess throughout my career, because of the amount of injuries I've had, people have kind of labeled me as this resilient person, which is difficult because you then take on that title and obviously you feel like you have to project that often. But for me, it's definitely something that now I pride myself on, my ability to be able to to bounce back from setbacks, to figure out why they've happened, and also accept them, because it's not necessarily about being resilient. Isn't necessarily about always showing that you can deal with a low and then get back to a high. It's also about when you're having those low times, being able to be like, right, I'm finding this hard at the moment. And it's also setting those standards of being a role model to show that you're vulnerable. That's also part of, I guess, being resilient. And that's what I've actually learned, is that for the first couple of years I was being resilient, but I was being resilient in the fact that I was just putting a brave face on. I was like, right, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get back to playing rugby. Whereas I've learned in the last couple of years, there's much more to it. It's a lot deeper to be able to build resilience. It's about showing your vulnerabilities and that you're actually having a hard time, and being able to speak to people like yourself and friends and family and say, look, this is hard. And so last year I had 4 surgeries last year, 3 on one of my shoulders. And I definitely got to a point last year where I was like, I'm not sure I can continue doing this. Like, I felt I was really, really suffering. I was probably experiencing one of the lowest points of my career. And I guess it was partly because I was having to face the fact that rugby might be coming to an end for me. And that was reality. But what I managed to do was I managed to speak to people about it. I managed to express myself, and that's what really helped get me through it, and then led me to be able to, right, I'm actually going to give this one more shot. I'm going to be passionate about it, and I'm going to try and enjoy it as much as I can, if it is my last time.
It's a brilliant outlook, and mental health as well is something that you've spoken very openly about. You've worked with a lot of charities on, and you've also seen it impact people very, very closely to you, but particularly among men and in high level sport. Again, we always say that it's not spoken about enough, and you continue to do plenty of charity work to try and change that.
Yeah, obviously mental health is a massive subject in society at the moment, and I guess particularly in this climate at the moment, where people are really uncertain about where the world's going, worried about jobs, worried about finances, worried about loved ones. Being able to speak up and share your mental health in any sort of climate is really important. But particularly, I think it's become quite high profile in sport, because people have recognized the fact that there are these pressures of the fact that, end of the day, as much as we love sport's a business. Like, there are standards to meet, there are expectations of you as a team, there are expectations of you as an individual, there are targets to meet. Just like any other business, people want your team or your club or your country to be the best. And if you're not the best, then people are going to review you and critique you and give you feedback that you might not necessarily want to hear. And sport has the power to connect people all across the world, which I think's amazing. I absolutely love all sorts of sports, like most people, but you have to really recognize the value of each person and remember that they're just as human as the rest of us, despite the fact that they have this global stardom, and people look up to them. And I think it's really hard. It's very easy, to get caught up in this attention you have as an athlete, that you are this influential person. You always have to put this brave face on, and the fact that why should you be suffering? You've got such an amazing job, traveling the world, living the life, getting paid considerable amounts of money for a lot of people. You shouldn't be having a hard time. But yeah, the pressures on individuals are just as high as any other industry. So, and I think what you have to remember also is that, especially in a team environment, you have so many shared experiences and connections, and so you're very, very rarely going through something by yourself. There's often people who will experience maybe not the same, but similar sorts of feelings, and so to be able to speak up about it and share is really valuable.
I think naturally as well, pressure comes, and I'm a culprit of it, socially and through work, is you're always comparing yourself to other people as well. And when you're in the environment that you're in, and there's players like Dan Norton that are achieving amazing things, and you maybe are sat on the sideline. You mentioned your 4 surgeries last year. That must have an impact after a while, and it's so important to try not to compare yourself to your peers.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, sport or rugby, or maybe rugby in particular, has like a finite, like you only have a short career. It's often, you're lucky if you play 10 years of professional rugby because of the toll it puts on your body. As I've said, obviously I've experienced a number of surgeries, but and coming with that, there's obviously young guys coming through who are striving for your spot. That's who I was when I was 18, and I was coming into the squad trying to make it.
It's sad saying that you saying that you're the older, more senior player now.
Yeah,
This is how far we were talking about school a minute ago, and now you're considered a more senior player. Oh.
Yeah, the vet of the squad, losing hair, growing grey beards. But yeah, there's young guys coming through, and the pressure's being put on you to continue to achieve. And like I said, sport's a business. Like if I'm on the sideline constantly being injured, they're not going to want to keep paying me to just sit on the physio bed. So I have to work really hard to get back fit, to earn my value and earn my place in the team. And so that it's a hard thing to be involved in.
So there was a point, obviously, last year when you'd had those 4 injuries. Did you feel like you were going to pack it all in, and that was the end of your rugby career? How dark were those moments?
Yeah, they were some of the lowest experiences I've had as a rugby player, I guess. I had a pretty routine shoulder injury. I dislocated my AC joint in Hamilton, New Zealand, and it's obviously, fortunately, we get very well looked after with our physio and healthcare. But I had conversations with the doctor and physio, and they said, right, usually this is sort of around a 12-week injury. I decided to have surgery, which was needed, and then got on with my rehab, and was getting back to a pretty good place and starting to get back into rugby. And I just couldn't pass. I couldn't pass a ball basically without being in like pretty significant pain. So I went through like a number of other weeks of rehab, which resulted in more surgery, and time went on and just further complications. Had another surgery, and yeah, I really hit a point where I was like, I'm not sure I can continue doing this. Like the whole cycle of injury, rehab, pain, injury, rehab, pain was just breaking me down really, really slowly. And obviously I was just stood on the sideline, or I was separated from the squad because everybody else was out on the pitch training or in the gym, and I was doing my own thing with the physio, which was often isolated. And it's dark. I'd experienced the kind of the physical process of rehab before. I'd obviously been through it a number of times, but you completely forget the effect of the mental strain it puts on you, because often it's quite repetitive, the stuff you do each day. It doesn't really change much, and so to get yourself up for it day after day when your body's hurting, because it's intense, like it's probably harder than a normal rugby training day, because most of your effort and energy is solely focused on that one particular body part. It just drains you, it just beats you down. And I guess I was having again those thoughts in my mind, being like, when will I ever stop getting injured? Why me? Those sorts of things, really.
Yeah, and it's testament to the talent you possess and how well you are regarded among coaches and players. But there's only so much you could be told, you know, that you're a fantastic player and we want you back and all that kind of thing. You need to be able to have processes to go through that actually allow you to get back to that point. Did you have anything? Do you kind of rely on anything or any routines that you do to kind of keep your mental strength and that positive outlook?
Yeah, I guess I've obviously learned a lot about myself and what works for me over time. And I think that's one really important thing is finding out what works for you, because what works for you might not work for somebody else. But for me, one of the main things I've taken away from it is like celebrating small wins, because it is often, especially long-term injuries can be 8, 12, 16 weeks. You've got to realize that the journey from A to B isn't going to be like up the whole way. There's going to be downs. There's going to be going back on yourself. There's all sorts you're going to experience. And so celebrating those small wins along the way are vital. So for instance, for me, it's like, if I'm ever on crutches, the day I get off crutches and I'll go and have a beer with my mates, or I'll have an extra slice of cake in the evening or something like that. But for me, that's really important, because that just is it. For me, it's like, right, that's done now. I've celebrated that. I've achieved that. I can reset, and that's for me a massive bonus. It's like a pat on the back, because I know I've still got 8 weeks left. That's just one little thing that I can tick off and be like, well, that's good. So that's really helped me. And then I guess the looking for your role models, and remembering that you can be a role model also in that process, like having conversations with people who may have also gone through the rehab process recently, and then realizing that whilst you're going on your journey, you are role modeling those behaviors to other people. So when someone else inevitably gets injured, they can look up to you and be like, oh, I'm really struggling with this at the moment. Like, how did you find it when you were rehabbing recently?
And we spoke about the Olympics earlier on. You've obviously just recovered from those 4 injuries last year, and you found the strength to get through that. You're back fully fit now. Were you hopeful of a spot on the plane this summer ahead of Tokyo 2020?
Yeah, extremely hopeful. I mean, for me, obviously, that was kind of as soon as Rio dramatically crashed, I was like, right, well, I've got to make it to Tokyo. And so for all of us looking forward to Tokyo this year, we were extremely excited about the prospect of going out there and competing, or potentially having the opportunity again to compete for Team GB. And that was a massive motivation for me, as you can understand. But yeah, it's obviously changed a little bit since then, and we're now having to eyeball and look at next year. But for me, it's still the main goal for me in terms of my rugby career, especially now I've managed to get back fit. That for me is everything.
Do you feel as though the extra year is going to help you, get your name out there even more as such, and get even more game time under your belt ahead of that?
Yeah, I think so. I probably, if I was to like really think about this year and where I was going into these next couple months, if Tokyo was to be happening this year, I probably wasn't quite ready. As much as I'd maybe convinced myself that I was, or I wanted to be there, I probably wasn't ready, and I've needed a bit more time. So for me, it's almost a bit of a blessing. Having had 14 months out of the game, it's despite having been a professional for 6 years, you forget, and played rugby for 20 odd years, you forget how quickly you can lose the sort of basics and fundamentals of the game. And so for me, that extra time is something that I'm definitely needed.
I mean, beyond rugby, have you thought about that point? Do you think there's maybe a career for you in your sort of charity work? Would you like to get into coaching, sports psychology, perhaps?
Yeah, I think with everything that happened last year, because I was at such a low point, I naturally, obviously, I started to explore life outside of rugby. It was something that I'd already put a bit of time into, but I hadn't really dedicated enough time to it, because obviously we all kid ourselves that we're going to be professional rugby players for the rest of our lives, and also we don't really want to face the reality of that rugby isn't a forever job. But yeah, I've been exploring a few avenues. I've been doing some coaching with a couple of local schools, which I've enjoyed. I like working with kids, so that's fun. And then definitely the kind of the mental health psychology, I don't know whether it's in sport or just in general, but helping people through my own experiences, and being able to give back in that sense, for me, is something that I think I'll be passionate about in the future.
And I know you'll say differently. Getting to Rio in the first place was an incredible achievement. Obviously, you would have liked to have taken part in the tournament as such, but at least they've left a kind of a step up ahead of Tokyo for you. So you'll be hopeful next year you can go on and clinch that gold medal with them next summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to get to the Olympics will be amazing regardless of whether we come home with a medal or not. But definitely we're going to be going, well, I'm certainly going to be going out there aiming to come back with a gold, which would, I mean, I've been lucky enough to win a Commonwealth bronze medal, and for me to step up on the podium and win a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games was an incredible experience. So to come back with an Olympic medal would just be different gravy.
Well, let's hope that next summer the gold medal is around your neck. Your story is incredible, an immense amount of courage and strength, and I think a lot of people can take so much away from it. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for chatting to me.
No, thanks, Toby. It's been good to reminisce and reflect on my injury-covered career.
No, there's so many positives as well. Your career's been fantastic. You've achieved so much, so many medals. Like I said earlier on, I think your greatest achievement is arguably the mental strength that you have built and that resilience along the way. I think that you can hold your head high and know that you're an outstanding role model, and you've done so much, and you'll continue to do a lot for a lot of people.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed this episode with Alex Davis, don't forget to click like and subscribe, and we'll see you for more on the Clubhouse very soon.